Now I'm going to be working out of Lightroom. Now the nice thing is about our software is that not only does it work seamlessly in a Lightroom, but it also works seamlessly in Aperture. So don't worry if you're more of an Aperture user. It's going to work and function exactly the same way as we are utilizing it in Lightroom today. So there's a couple different ways you can launch the software. Simply select an image that you want to work on. You can right click on it. You can go edit in, and then you can choose from all those different modules. So let's do that. Edit in. We'll pull it up here. Now I can choose the individual modules that I may want to launch. Or if I want to have a layered workflow and I want to bring in maybe two different images at the same time and create layers, I can select those two photos. And the way I selected the second one was just simply holding down the Command key and clicked on the second photo. So now two are selected. And I can go up to File, plug in extras, and I can now choose to launch the Perfect Photo Suite 7 this way. Now, when you launch the Perfect Photo Suite 7, the first thing that's going to pop up is Perfect Layers. Again, Perfect Layers is that landing point. It's the hub for everything. From here, you can jump in all the different modules, so you don't have to be constantly saving and applying and opening new ones. If you want to go through different modules, you can just stack them all on top of each other and then click Save and be done. We also have our toolbar over here that gives you all the tools that you would need, essentially from Photoshop. So Perfect Layers, again, is that layered environment outside of Photoshop. And if you're a Lightroom or Aperture user, you know you don't have the ability to work with layers. We also have our browser menu right here. So if you want to open up a folder of images, you can simply search for a folder under File, Browse, and when you find that folder you want to work with, just open it, and now you'll have all of your folders or subfolders here available that you can simply click to open up and work with any of those images. Okay, so in this example, I brought in two photos into Perfect Layers. This is my top layer, which I can turn on and off. When I turn it off, it reveals the layer directly underneath, this bottom layer. So this is what I mean by layers. If you're not familiar with the Photoshop term of layers, it's really just stacking two photos or two images on top of each other. So it's creating layers, just like a sandwich would. If you have multiple layers, you have multiple stackings of different items. So I've got two photos, and in this example, we've got a photo where this girl on the left loves how she looks in this photo, but the girl on the right isn't happy with how she appears. So we photograph them again. Now, girl on the right loves how she looks, but the girl on the left isn't happy with how she appears. So I've got two photos and two girls agreeing upon two different images to use. So what I want to do is I want to have the ability to make a head swap. Now, ordinarily, I would have to take these images over to Photoshop to do this. And then I'd have to create a layer mask, and then I have to choose to paint with white or paint with black, and it's a lot of steps. But inside of Perfect Layers, I just simply select that top layer, grab my masking brush. Now all I'm going to do is paint away the top face that she doesn't like to reveal the bottom face that she does like. So now I've effectively gone in, removed the background from that one area of the image to reveal what's directly underneath. So really not the background, the foreground though. I paint over the foreground and it erases it so you can see directly underneath. So now we've done a fast, easy head swap. And if they don't line up perfectly, just grab your transform tool. You can move around that top or bottom layer to get things to line up better. So this will work really well if you have a family portrait with a child that refuses to smile or keep his eyes open. Just capture them one time, and then you can align or adjust the top or bottom layer so it fits perfectly. So that's a quick look on how to use Perfect Layers to have a layered environment outside of Photoshop. Now the nice thing is, this is just a fully expanded pop-up window from inside of Lightroom. I'm not even leaving the actual Lightroom software. So when I click Save, it's going to save this image or file as a PSD file, which is a layered Photoshop file, and it'll save it right back into Lightroom. So I don't have to import it and add it to my collection or my catalog. it will automatically round trip whatever I'm doing from the software back into Lightroom and save that as a PSD file. So a nice, easy way to work with layers without ever having to open up Photoshop. All right, next one we're going to take a look at is this photo right here. Here we have a photo with a bride and a groom sitting on a bicycle, and it's a great shot. I love the color that we have on the bicycle. I love the color in the brick. But there's two things I do not like about this image. The first one is the air vent. It's distracting. The second one is the discontinuation of the brick wall in the upper right-hand corner. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of those two things. So all I'm going to do is take this image, I'll go up to File, Plug in Extras, and from here I can either launch the Perfect Photo Suite 7 again, or I can launch Perfect Layers again. All right, now that we've done this, I'm going to show you how to use Perfect Layers and how to use the different tools to give you the power of Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do though is make a copy of this. So you're going to be able to look at my original later on after we've finished. So I make a copy. The nice thing is in Perfect Layers, you can make copies of layers, you can delete layers, you can merge layers together, you can create fill layers, etc., just to give you that layered environment. Now what I want to do is I want to come over here, I want to choose one of these tools here called my Retouch brush. When I select my Retouch brush, I have the ability to turn that brush into a clone brush, which is exactly what I'm doing. So I'm enabling the clone brush. Now I'm going to make this brush bigger. Now what I want to do is I want to get rid of this air vent right here. So what I need to do is I need to sample this area of the brick wall and then clone that so I can put it right over top of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is bump up my feathering because I want a lot of feathering on this so it looks natural and realistic. Now I have to set my targeted area. So that means I hold down my Option key, I click on a targeted brick area, and now my brush takes on whatever I've just copied. So now I clicked over the air vent, and essentially I completely covered up that air vent. So now you can see that that air vent becomes completely unnoticeable. And because of where I copied, that discoloration of the brick looks natural and realistic. Now we move over here to this part of the brick where it discontinues. I'm just going to hold down my Option key again, sample. Now I move my brush tool over, and I just try to line that up as best as possible and paint. So there we go. So now I've gotten rid of that air vent. I've also continued the brick wall in the upper right-hand corner. So now I love how this looks, and I want to go in and add some effects to it. So instead of clicking Save and taking it right back into Lightroom, I'm going to jump right into Perfect Effects. When I open up Perfect Effects, it's now going to give me the ability to work with over 400 different photographic effects and filters. All you have to do is scroll through the different categories. Because 400 is a lot to navigate through, we break them down into categories. So I just scroll through till I find a category that applies. So let's go to Portrait Enhance right here. Simply single click to uncollapse the Portrait Enhance category. Now I've got all these different portrait related effects to choose from. Now the nice thing is you can just simply click on one to see what it looks like. So that's the Luminizer portrait. Let's take a look at Portrait Color Boost. As I click on each of these, it's cycling through or toggling through. So the very next effect I click on actually is the one that we'll be viewing. It's not going to stack them. It's just replacing them. So let's find Tootsie Glow, and let's try Tootsie Pop. All right, now Tootsie Pop is the one I think that looks the best on this photo. I love how it looks. I love how it makes the red on the bike stand out and the tires stand out a little bit more. The only thing I don't like is the discoloration a little bit on his skin here, on his neck and on his ear and on his hair a little bit. So I'm going to grab my masking brush, and all I'm going to do is paint that away. Just simply start painting with your brush tool over any area that you don't want the effect to be applied. So there you have it. Now, That looks a lot better, but I still want to add another effect. So to do this, I want to keep the Tootsie Pop effect, so I need to click Add over here to create a new empty layer. By creating that new empty layer, I can now stack another effect on top and not worry about replacing or changing the Tootsie Pop effect. So for the very next effect, I'm going to add a vignette. So I scroll down here to my vignettes. I'm going to go right into Darken, click to uncollapse, and I just scroll through till I find a vignette I want to work with, and my favorite one is Big Softy, so I click to apply. Now with that Big Softy vignette, I've got the ability to control just about every component of that vignette. So if I want it darker, I can drag down the brightness level. If I want more of a midpoint or less of a midpoint, I can control where that falls on the image. I can adjust the feathering, the roundness, all these great things. So I've got full control. Now let's take a look at my original, Command P. Here it is before the effects, here it is after. Now what I want to do is I want to click Apply, so we go all the way back into Perfect Layers with all of my effects that I've just added. And then we'll take a look at the original image before we used the clone brush on the photo and the effects. So you ready? Let's take a look at the original. Turn that top layer off. Here it is before. Now here it is afterwards, using Perfect Layers to get rid of the vent and to extend the brick, and then using Perfect Effects to add a couple different photographic effects. So again, my original, and here it is afterwards. So again, Perfect Effects allows you to have that category or catalog of 400 effects to choose from to give your image that finished professional look. All right, we'll jump back over here into Lightroom. Now the next one we'll take a look at is going to be Perfect Black and White. Now Perfect Black and White, we're going to take this landscape shot, which is just an ordinary landscape, and we're going to turn it into a stunning black and white landscape. So what I want to do is I want to take this image and I want to take it right into Perfect Black and White. So I'll right click on it and I'll go to Edit In, and from here I can launch the Perfect Black and White interface. Now when I launch Perfect Black and White, it gives me a default black and white conversion. So here we have just a regular black and white photo that I still want to enhance and manipulate a little bit more, because this is by no means the finished look that I'm going for. Now over here on the right, we've got all these different sliders and tools that you can use. Now, if you're really into black and white photography, this is really going to appeal to you, because you can control and fine tune to get the desired look that you want with the brightness, the contrast, the blacks, the whites, the highlights and the shadows. We've got under color response, lens filters that you can replicate. So just click on a lens filter and you see how the image changes. We even have film grains that we have gone out and we have scanned. So you turn on film grain. Now I've got all these old types of black and white film that you can replicate the exact type of film grain that you would get. So you just kind of hover over if you want to see a preview, or you can click to apply. So the film grain is a great option if you really want to replicate old black and white film. We've even added things like toner as well. So under toner, I've got all these different types of toner that you can utilize. And you just hover over them if you want to see a preview. Now, if you're like me, you're just going to look for a fast, easy solution. So you're going to come over here to the left-hand side. On the left-hand side, we have all these different categories of black and white conversions. So everything from basic fundamentals to 19th century processes like ambrotype, cyanotype, palladium, or you can go to 21st century modern digital if you want like an HDR grunge black and white effect, etc. But one that we've created that's my favorite for this is Ansel Adams in the Valley. So I'm going to type in the keyword Ansel, and it now brings up the Ansel in the Valley effect. Simply single click to apply. Now I love how this looks on my photo, and I'm almost done, but I want to show you some other tools that we have included inside of Perfect Black and White to help you enhance your photo a little bit more. I'm going to grab the targeted brightness tool right here. This targeted brightness tool is going to allow me to change the brightness level of anything in the image. So I click on the sky. If I drag to the right, it's going to make it lighter. If I drag to the left, it's going to make the sky darker. Now notice how only the sky is being affected when I drag that. All right, so now that we've done this, let's go ahead and grab another tool. We'll grab my brightness brush. Now with my brightness brush, I can toggle it from lighten to darken. And I've also got this perfect brush feature enabled, which I'll talk about here in a little bit more in a second. The perfect brush essentially allows me to paint an effect or an adjustment, but only on the area that I want it. So you'll notice that my brush is splashing over onto the clouds, but yet it's not painting in darkness. That little dash mark in the middle is constantly sampling and will only apply that effect to wherever that little dash mark goes. So there we have it in a real short amount of time. Let's take a look at my original, Command P. So an average color landscape shot that I've turned into a really beautiful black and white photo that I could print out, on canvas and even make a gallery wrap out of. So that's a quick look on how to use perfect black and white to take any color, portrait, or landscape and make it a stunning black and white portrait or landscape. All right, we'll jump back over into our Lightroom catalog, and we'll just check in here on the control panel and make sure everyone's doing well. All right. Now the next one we're going to take a look at is back in Perfect Effects. And again, Perfect Effects we've already taken a look at, but I want to do a little bit more in-depth with some of the different tools, especially the Perfect Brush, because it's so valuable and saves you so much time. So here we have a picture of the Vista House. This is just outside of Portland, Oregon. And what I want to do is I want to take this photo and I want to enhance it. So I'm going to go Edit In, and I'm going to launch Perfect Effects 4 again. Now, when you launch the individual modules this way, you have the ability to choose Edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, Edit a copy, or Edit the original. I always recommend editing a copy with Lightroom adjustments. But because I'm not going to save my work and I don't want to make copies of my original image, I'm just going to edit the original. Now, when I launch Perfect Effects, as we've seen before, we've got all of our categories of effects over here. All I have to do is find an effect that I want to work with. So for this one, I'm going to choose something with a contrast effect. So I'm just going to scroll through till I come to my contrast category, single click to uncollapse, and then I'll browse for a contrast effect like tonal contrast. Simply single click to apply. Now that I've added that tonal contrast, I can come over here to the right-hand side and I can adjust things like bump up the local contrast, maybe adjust the black slider to really fine-tune this image to get the desired look I want. Now I love how this looks, but the next thing I want to do is enhance the sky a little bit more. So I'm going to click Add to create a new empty layer. When I create that new empty layer, I can now add another effect. If I don't create that new empty layer by clicking Add, the very next effect I click on will replace that tonal contrast effect, and I don't want to do that. Now on the next effect, I don't know where to find something for the sky, so I'm just going to type in a keyword. I'm essentially trying to make the sky more blue. So I type in the keyword blue, and now I get results for all my blue related effects. Every effect has multiple keywords associated to it. So I'm going to select solid blue filter. Now I'm also going to bump up the strength of that a little bit more. Okay, I'm loving how that looks on the sky, but I do not like how it's cooling off the stone on the Vista House, and it's cooling off the reflection of the sunset. So what I want to do is I want to remove this effect from the stone and the sidewalk and the windows here. So I grab my masking brush. Now your initial response is probably to start painting away by hand everything in the foreground. But I've done this a few times and I quickly realized, why spend more time painting away the bigger section of the image when I can paint away the smaller section of the image, being the sky in this case, and then simply invert my mask. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll take my brush, I'm just going to start painting away the sky, and then I'll invert the mask. Now, to see where my brush is going a little bit better, I hit Control M. Control M brings up my mask mode. When I have my mask mode enabled, it gives me an overlay perspective. I'm actually not painting with red. I'm just using this as a way to show myself where I've brushed and where my brush has been, so I know if I'm making a really accurate mask or not. Because sometimes when you're painting out a subtle effect, you can't see where you've painted or where you haven't painted. Now, as I get close to the Vista house, I have to be very careful not to touch any of that building, because if I do, it's going to throw off my layer mask. Now, I would either have to zoom in and be very, very careful and make my brush really, really small, or I'd have to go over to Perfect Mask and make a selection, or go over to Photoshop and make a selection. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to enable my Perfect Brush feature right here at the top. So I simply click to enable Perfect Brush. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that Perfect Brush and continue painting away the effect, but only from the sky. Now you see that little dash in the middle, as I was talking about before in Perfect Black and White? That dash in the middle of my brush is constantly sampling. So even though my brush is splashing over onto the Vista house, it's not erasing the effect from the Vista house. As long as that little dash mark stays on the sky, it won't erase that effect from anywhere but the sky. Now, just to prove to you how well of a job it's doing, let's disable the Perfect Brush. Now watch what happens when my brush barely touches the Vista house, right? It's splashing over and it's erasing all of that from the stone. And I can't afford to do that, so Command Z to undo. Let's re-enable the Perfect Brush, and now watch. Just allows me to be very quick, very efficient with my brush and not have to worry about being 100% accurate. So now Control M turns off that overlay perspective. You'll see it's created a layer mask right here for me, which I love not having to create those on my own like you have to do in Photoshop. This knows exactly what you're doing, so it creates that layer mask for you. You don't have to choose paint with white or paint with black. It knows, it's intuitive, and it's making it a lot easier and a lot faster for you to make these adjustments. So now if I bump up my strength slider, notice how only the foreground is being changed, and that's the exact opposite of what I want. So I click invert up here at the top to invert my mask. Now you'll notice how only the blue filter is affecting the sky now. So I created that layer mask so that only the blue filter is being applied to the sky. Now let's take a look at my original Command P, preview mode off. Here it is before, here it is after. If you don't want to hit Command P and you're just looking for an icon, you can click on the preview down here at the bottom. Turn that on and off. So that's a quick look on how to use Perfect Effects. Now the nice thing is, anything I do here, when I click Apply, will then save it back into Lightroom as a PSD file with a new layer, so it's non-destructive. All right, we'll jump back over into Lightroom. Now the next one we're going to take a look at is going to be how to use Perfect Portrait to save you time portrait retouching. So I'm just going to open up a portrait shot here that I want to retouch, and we'll zoom in just so you can see the original. Now, it's not bad, but what I want to do is I want to smooth out the complexion a little bit. I want to whiten her eyes a little bit and really minimize the bags under her eyes. So simply right-click on the image, go to Edit In, and I'll now choose to launch Perfect Portrait 2. When I launch Perfect Portrait, it's going to utilize an auto face detection technology to scan the photo to find exactly where the faces are in this photo, and when it finds a face, it creates a white box around it. It then locates the facial features, and then the box turns green. So now it's found her face, it's selected her facial features, it's applied a skin smoother, it's whitened the eyes and whitened the teeth a little bit. Now I can be done if I want to. I can click Apply, and it will save all these changes right back into my Lightroom catalog, which will look great. Or if we want to zoom in and fine tune a little bit more, just click on the face. It zooms in, and now you can see the different modules or features that it's selected. So it's made selections around the eyes, the lips, and the teeth. Now the nice thing is I can stretch this out. If I need to adjust, I can easily do so. Just simply single click on any one of those feature points and drag them out. So it's as automated as you want it to be, or you have full control over the selection so you can fine tune and adjust it. Now let's hide those feature points. Now if I want, I can drop down the smoothing, or I can increase the skin smoothing. I can get rid of that skin shine that you're going to notice right here on her cheeks and on the bridge of her nose and a little bit on the forehead. So I grab right here the shine reduction slider and I bump it up about halfway, and it knocks down that skin shine. I can also scroll down here if I want to make the eyes more white. I can drag the whitening slider up to make the eyes more white, and you'll notice how only the whites of her eyes change. You can also splash a little bit of detail into those eyes. If I wanted to make her teeth more white, I could, but right now they're borderline radioactive white to begin with, so I'm going to back off the whitening slider. And if I wanted to, I could put a little vibrance on the lips. Now, everything's looking great. The only other thing I would want to do in this photo is take my brush and minimize those bags under her eyes. So I grab my retouch brush right here. Now with my retouch brush, I want to drop down the opacity because I really look for that delicate transition, so it's still an effective brush tool, but it's not noticeable where it's been. So now I just click and drag with my retouch brush right underneath the eye. Let's do one more pass as well. And we'll go on this side here, click and drag. All right, so now I've gone in, I've smoothed out her skin, I've whitened her eyes, and I've also taken my retouch brush directly under the bags under her eyes. Now let's see the original, Command P. Here it is before, here it is afterwards. So smoothing out her complexion, just taking a few years off of her face. So that's a quick look on how to use Perfect Portrait to go in and save time portrait retouching. If you tried to do this in Photoshop, you'd be making multiple layers. You'd have to be painting in and painting out and creating all these different layer masks and taking a lot longer. So that's a quick look at how to use Perfect Portrait. All right, we'll jump back over here into Lightroom. Now the next one we're going to take a look at is going to be Perfect Mask. Now Perfect Mask is one of my favorites to demonstrate because it takes the very difficult task of removing backgrounds from difficult foregrounds and makes it a lot easier. Now if you're on a Mac, you can just simply drag any file from Lightroom down into the Perfect Photo Suite icon. So the drag and drop works really well on the Macs, and it works really well with our software as well. So here we have an image that I've opened up inside the suite. And again, that default is perfect layers. So you've got all of your layers over here. So I can turn those layers on and off. We have a cloudy sky layer directly underneath, which is what I'm going to utilize next. What we have is an image of a bride and groom with a veil blowing in the wind. Now we wanted to use this image, but the bride and groom did not like that plain blue sky. They wanted something a little bit more dramatic for the background. So they asked for cloudy sky. So we said, not a problem. Now, if you're wondering where we got this cloud layer from, we have a bunch of backgrounds already included in our software when you get it. So to access those, just simply go over here to Extras, click on Extras, and now click on Backgrounds and choose the category of backgrounds you want to work with. So we can go to Skies. So we've got about 100 different backgrounds that you can utilize, or just use your own background. Just add a second photo to the image that you currently have open, and you can make that your new background if you want to. You don't have to use ours, but they're there if you need them. Now, to show you how to add a new background, just simply find a layer that you want to use. Like let's say this sky layer right here. Double click on it. Now the software is going to ask you, do you want to create a new file? Or do you want to cancel what you've done? Or do you want to add this layer, create a new image? So I can click Add. Now I've got my layer right here on top, which I can then drag directly below. So now, if I were to remove this background, this would be the new sky layer. I don't want to use that one, so I'm just going to delete it. But that's where we got that sky layer from. Now let's go right into Perfect Mask. Inside of Perfect Mask, I'm going to go after colors instead of edges to remove backgrounds. Now, ordinarily, I would try to go in and take a brush and paint away this background, but I want to show you a tool that we have called the Drop Brush tool. The Drop Brush tool is just simply going to erase sections or segments of color. So all I'm going to do is take this Drop Brush tool and I'm going to paint over background colors that I want to erase, and it's going to take out big chunks and big sections. Now, if you've never used Perfect Mask before, you may pick it up, open it up with an image, and try to use this tool that you saw me using called the Drop Brush. And you remember me saying, paint across the background colors that you want to erase. And you're going to do this, and then you're going to have this happen to you, potentially. It's going to remove too much information. And then you're probably going to get frustrated, and you're going to get mad, and you're going to feel like the software is not working, and we oversold you on something. And that's not the case at all. So let's hit Command Z to undo. What happens is every tool has settings. So if you're not happy with the results, just change the settings on that tool. It's not the software's fault. It's just that the settings are not right for that image. So every image may require different settings. So on my drop brush, I look at my settings, and right now they're removing really big, unrefined segments or sections of color. And what I want them to do is I want them to remove really small, really refined sections or segments of color. So I drop down to really small, really refined pieces or segments. Now with that drop brush tool, I paint over the exact same area where I did last time, and I let go, and let's see what happens now. It now knocks out that entire blue sky. And when it hits the wedding veil, it stops erasing. So it completely protects the veil because it's now taking away really small, really refined segments. And because it only takes away segments, this little portion in between the veil and the bride doesn't get touched. So I just have to click to paint there to erase that piece. All right, now what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to paint away the old sky out of the veil. And I can't use my drop brush tool because it will sample the veil colors. So I have to switch over to my magic brush. Now with my magic brush, I'm going to simply click and drag through the veil because the magic brush is intuitive. It's a smart brush, and it's looking at those colors that we were just erasing with my drop brush, and it's now using that as a tolerance or a threshold. So it's only erasing those background colors that we just sampled with our drop brush just a moment ago. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Apply. It's going to take what I've done and save it right back into Perfect Layers. So you'll see I've got my layer mask right there. Now all I'm going to do is grab that bottom layer. I'm going to grab my transform tool right here, and I'm going to simply drag that cloud layer through the back of the veil just so you can see how good of a job it does. So that's a quick look on how to use Perfect Mask to remove backgrounds from a really difficult foreground.